Go for the 2.com, even with the Week 7 college football predictions. We'll start in the Big 12, Oklahoma and Kansas State. Intriguing matchup. Oklahoma coming off a 45-40 Red River win over Texas. Offense with Baker Mayfield put up 670 total yards on Charlie Strong's defense last week. They now come back home to face a disciplined Kansas State team that's coming off a 44-38 victory over Texas Tech. But when you break this game down, for me, I think it comes down to the speed on the perimeter by Oklahoma. I like Baker Mayfield in that offense. They're averaging 313 passing yards per game. You look at K-State's secondary, they're giving up 229 yards through the air. I think if Oklahoma jumps up early, which I expect them to do, they have some momentum now. I think Oklahoma runs away with this matchup. They won this ball game in Manhattan last year, 55-0. Expect the same type of outcome. I think Oklahoma puts the pedal to the metal and wears down Kansas State in this battle. I think the Sooners have a convincing 20-point victory or more over Kansas State in this battle. Florida State and Wake Forest. Wake Forest played Florida State very tough last year in Salem. They lost that ball game 24-16. Wake playing very well. They're 5-1 on the year right now, coming off a very impressive victory, 28-9 over Syracuse. Florida State coming off a very impressive 20-19 victory over undefeated Miami. They trailed that matchup 13-3 at the half before making adjustments and pulling that game out in the fourth quarter with a blocked extra point. They now come back home to face Wake Forest. Wake Forest playing very well in run support, only giving up 118 rushing yards on the ground, but their secondary's allowing 249 yards through the air. That's where I think DeAndre Francois, whether he plays or not, look for Sean McGuire or Constantine to get in, can attack that Wake Forest secondary. Wake Forest struggles with speed teams on their schedule. They got worn down by NC State and Raleigh. They lost that ball game by double digits. I think it's the same in Tallahassee. I don't think Florida State will be looking ahead Wake Forest. They need to put back-to-back games to get some momentum. I think Dalvin Cook breaks out, and I look for Florida State's defense to hold quarterback Wolford and Hinton in check. As a combined, their quarterbacks, they're only completing 58% of their passes. I look for Florida State's passing offense to break out. They're averaging 263 yards through the air. Look for them to have a big day against Wake Forest, and I think Florida State dominates this game. I think they put up 50 points on Wake, and I do think they win this game by 30 points or more. A convincing victory by Florida State at home in Tallahassee. Keep in mind, it's also a conference game, so I expect the Seminoles to roll in this matchup. Another team is Michigan State at home for homecoming facing Northwestern. I liked BYU last week because I thought that they can play a Michigan State type of game. They did just that and won that matchup 31-14. Now Michigan State has lost 3 in a row. It's homecoming, but they have Michigan on deck. I don't think they look past Northwestern in this matchup. Northwestern is allowing 157 rushing yards on the ground. They got worn down by a bigger physical offensive line 2 weeks ago in Nebraska. They allowed 310 rushing yards to the Cornhuskers at home. I expect the same here against Michigan State. I don't think it's fancy. I think Mark D'Antonio and his offensive staff look to wear down Northwestern in this matchup, and I think they get a convincing 17-point victory over Northwestern. From a talent perspective, Michigan State has the type of offense and defensive lines to wear down Northwestern. A cause of concern for Michigan State is sack total. Michigan State only has 5 total sacks in 5 games, but they're still playing very well in run support, only giving up 134 rushing yards per game. I think they can make Northwestern's offense one-dimensional and really wear down Northwestern, and more importantly, put them into third down and long situations that I think it gives them the advantage for their secondary. I expect Michigan State to roll in this ballgame by 17 points or more on Saturday in East Lansing. Keep in mind, it is homecoming. Spartans roll at home. Another intriguing Big Ten battle, Iowa and Purdue. Purdue coming off a 34-31 victory over Illinois in Champaign. Turnover margins really plagued this team. You look at Iowa overall, they got a gutty road victory over Minnesota. Wasn't pretty, 14-7. But this is not the same Iowa team. It's back-to-back road games for the Hawkeyes. They're only rushing for 149 yards per game. Not the same type of offense that our center, Austin Blythe, went on to the NFL. Not the same physical, blue-collar type of offensive line that really pounded the rock last year between the tackles. I look for Purdue's offense to really be in this game from start to finish. They're averaging 285 passing yards per game. I think they can put some pressure on Desmond King in that secondary, and I think they'll be in the ball game from start to finish. Purdue is 3-2. Their coach is on the hot seat, and more importantly, this team is fighting for a bowl berth, so I expect their best effort on Saturday. It's a conference opponent. I think Purdue strikes the upset at home over Iowa. I think they'll be in this game from start to finish, and I do think that they pick up a 3-point victory over the Hawkeyes and move to 4-2 on the year. Another intriguing battle in the Pac-12 is Utah and Oregon State. Utah coming off a solid home performance over Arizona. Oregon State got the upset last week against California. Oregon State playing very well under head coach Gary Anderson, but their defense is allowing 224 rushing yards on the ground. They're not as solid in run support as other teams within the conference, and they're going to be playing the best offense and defensive line in the conference in Utah. Look for Troy Williams to break out, and look for this defense that's very solid in run support to make Garrison and that offense overall one-dimensional. I think Utah has way too much physicality for Oregon State, even though the game is played in Corvallis. I expect Utah to dominate this ball game. I think they win this game by 21 points or more. I think they just have the better players, and I expect Troy Williams and that offense to wear down Oregon State's defensive front seven. Utah gets a convincing road victory in Corvallis by at least 20 points this coming Saturday. You look at Arizona State and Colorado. Colorado played USC very tough. They lost that matchup 21-14. Arizona State got a very gutty, solid victory over UCLA 23-20. You look at this ball game last year. Arizona State dominated this game 48-23. Colorado's much improved. They're playing very well with running back Phillip Lindsay. They're only giving up around 140 rushing yards per game. But here's what I look at when I look at this matchup. I look at Arizona State's defense. They're only giving up 89 rushing yards per game, and they're very balanced on the offensive side of the ball. They're passing for 250 a game, rushing for 183 yards per game. I love DeMario Richard and Balaj at the running back position. Quarterback is an issue for this game. Manny Wilkins is banged up. So is White, the quarterback, and the third stringer's banged up. But I really think that Todd Graham and the offensive staff look to slow this game down, get into a low-scoring game with Colorado, and I think their defense keeps them in this game from start to finish. I think Colorado wins this game because it's played in Boulder, but I think this game is very, very close. I think they win this game by 3 points. I expect Arizona State to be in this game from start to finish because of their physicality on the defensive side of the ball and their ability to run between the tackles. I look for Arizona State to push Colorado to the limit on Saturday night. Another intriguing battle in the SEC is Alabama and Tennessee. Alabama dominated Arkansas last week, 49-30. They got a convincing road victory. Their defense forced turnovers and scored off of those turnovers. They now go on the road to face Tennessee, who's coming off an emotional double overtime loss to Texas A&M. I liked Texas A&M last week because of their ability on the defensive front seven and their back end led by Armani Watts. Keep in mind as well that Tennessee did have 7 turnovers in the ballgame, but that Texas A&M defense did force most of those. They now come back home. They need to get right back emotionally. This is a rivalry game, and you keep in mind that Josh Dobbs has played very well back-to-back years against Alabama. He played very well on the road last year in Tuscaloosa. They lost that battle 19-14, but they had the football with around 2 minutes left in that matchup. I think Tennessee is playing inspired football. They might not have the best talent overall in the SEC, but I like what they showed me on the road in College Station. They were down for much of that battle by 21 points. They forced that game into overtime. I think they push Alabama to the limit in this ball game as well. They have to get right back emotionally. They've had a run here where they played Florida, they played Georgia and got a Hail Mary, and then they had that emotional loss to Texas A&M. They can erase all the negative from last week with a solid performance and an upset win over Alabama. I think they can be in this game from start to finish. Look at Kumara, their running back that they utilized last week. He totaled 288 total yards in that matchup. They like to utilize him in the short to intermediate passing game. I think the X factor for me is Josh Dobbs. His mobility on the perimeter puts pressure on Alabama's secondary and Alabama's defensive ends. And I think Alabama pushes the Crimson Tide to the limit. But in the end, Alabama walks away with a 3-point victory in Neyland Stadium. Should be a great week of college football. We'll cover all the big games this coming weekend on SB Nation Radio. You can follow us on SB Nation Radio, College Football Game Day, or follow me on Twitter at GoForThe2 or at GoForThe2. That's the number 2, GoForThe2.com. College football is great. I just love talking about it. Stay with me all season long.